It's Thanksgiving Sunday in Canada, and it's just by chance that the story of the 10 lepers is the reading for this week. And the story of saying thank you, and how many have been healed by Jesus and didn't say thank you. So as we're going through this story, I was kind of struck by the whole focus, especially the gravitas that comes with this being Thanksgiving Sunday. Giving thanks is such a loaded thing. You wouldn't think it would be. I mean, it's one of the earliest social graces we teach children after don't hit. When they learn to talk, we teach them how to say thank you. Even some people who are raising their children with baby sign language. That's one of the first things that they teach. It's a social grace that we just accept in our society. And in this story, you can almost hear Jesus yelling after the crowd, "You're welcome!" because they didn't say thank you on the way out. So let's look at the story a little bit. As Jesus is moving from Galilee to Jerusalem, um, the whole geography is that Galilee is up here, and then there's Samaria, and then there's Jerusalem. So Jesus is always going through Samaria when he goes back and forth, and that's actually part of the story, because again we're reminded that it is the Samaritan that comes and says thank you. Now they probably were all Samaritans, but that means something in Jesus' world. To be signaled out as a Samaritan means that you were a person who was not recognized by Jerusalem. You were not recognized as part of the Hebrew family, and yet, you understood who Jesus was, and you recognized the significance of Jesus, and wanted to, in this instance, thank Jesus, or in the story of the Good Samaritan, recognize that there's kindness and goodness in the people that the Judeans generally vilify. So here we have another instance of the people who are vilified being the ones with the social grace, being the ones with the awareness. So Jesus is walking through, and he encounters what we're calling with 10 people. Leprosy traditionally is what it's called. I don't know enough about the biology of it, although I do know that there wasn't a cure until the last 100-ish, maybe 200, but I don't think so, 100 years, for this disease. So it's something that has plagued people for thousands of years. And only recently have we had an answer to it. But it was contagious and it was disfiguring. And so the people who had it were often sent to the outsides of towns. Children would have it, babies would have it. It was not a forgiving thing. It was something people were scared of. And here's Jesus walking through, sees all these people and goes closer, which no one, doesn't matter if you were from Galilee or Samaria or Jerusalem, Judea, no one would have gone close to that. But this is Jesus. So Jesus does. And they call out to him. So obviously he's not too close. And that would be part of the social cue of the day as well. That people would talk back and forth, but they would have figured out through trial and error how close people needed to be approximately. So the people who had leprosy would be removing themselves as well as the community sending them away. So Jesus would be aware, and the people with the skin lesions would be aware of how close they could be to a healthy person physically. So Jesus had got to that mark, and they yell out to him, "Lord, Master," so they know who he is. Or they recognize Jesus as someone of power and significance. Either way, Jesus is important, and they recognize that. So they call out to him. Now, they probably have called out to many begging because they wouldn't have had jobs. They wouldn't have been allowed to work in the community. But this is something different. They're not calling out for money. They're calling out to Jesus, "Please help me." They knew. And so Jesus tells them, "Go on your way, go see the priest." Now, in that kind of environment, they would have had to show themselves to the priest to be declared clean so they could come back into town. This wasn't just something that they could walk home, and everything would be fine. They had to show the priest. And as they move forward, you can almost see this in a movie, as they move forward, the lesions, the disformities, everything just left them, as we're told in the story. And they're aware of this, and they get so excited they start to run into their community. I mean, these are people who potentially have not been able to even talk with their loved ones, certainly not hug or touch them for a long, long time. They're ostracized. They're the outsides, the scourge of society. and they are healed. They're cleaned. Their skin is better. And as they run, one stops and realizes, oh, wait a minute, and turns back. And that's our moment of thanks. Thanks is something that we kind of take for granted in our society and consider people to be quite rude when they don't. I remember years and years ago, I've told this story before, when I was working in my first student placement. My voice was not strong at that point in time. I was just in my young 20s. And I'd said thank you at the same time as I was closing the car door. I know I said it. They didn't hear it. That incident dogged me the rest of the time that I was working in that community. I became very quickly known as the person who can't say thank you. And it didn't matter how much I poured it on afterwards. That incident was all it took. We judge people who don't say thank you. We think they're rude and inconsiderate. We think they don't have any basic social graces. Even Jesus said, well, where are the others? You know, weren't 10 of you healed? Why are only one of you coming back? It's not to say that they were not grateful. They probably were incredibly grateful. But they had other things, earthly things, focus things that they wanted to do. And that was so consuming their minds that they continued running off to the priest, to the home, to wherever they were headed. Only one stopped to realize what had happened, turned around, and said thank you. As a result, that one got the explanation that it was your faith that made you whole. Now, this follows on the story of last week. We were talking about faith and the fact that faith is a choice. It is something that we are not just given as the closest followers to Jesus wanted to have happen. This is something that we have to choose. And in this instance, that one person chose to go back and thank Jesus. We don't know if they recognize Jesus as Messiah, because remember, story is supposed to take place before any of that happened with Jerusalem. We don't know if they recognize Jesus as Messiah. We don't know if they recognize Jesus as just a really cool guy. We don't know if they recognize Jesus as some kind of doctor or musician or magician or healer. We don't know how they saw Jesus. They recognized him, maybe, but they did not. But we don't know what it matters to them. So this person turned back without having a sense of necessarily who Jesus was or why Jesus was significant. Certainly not the God in human form that we believe, because that's a theology, a recognition that came later. He saw the value of going back and thanking someone who they all respected and they all regarded as being incredibly helpful. But he recognized that this person needed thanks. It's really easy for us to look at someone of power and say, they've got all they need. They don't need to have anything acknowledged. They don't need to have any extra because they can do it themselves. They have everything they need. They are given kudos all over the place. I don't have to add to that. And there's an element of truth to that. When we see people who just do the basics, but because of who they are in society, they're just heaped with praise and thanks, and that it feels phony, it feels empty, but doesn't stop us or shouldn't stop us from feeling that genuine appreciation, that thanks, that for the gifts given, whether they're healing like the story or anything else that has been provided. This Sunday, we celebrate Thanksgiving, which is a harvest feast. It's a harvest festival that kind of falls in line with the festivals that Jesus would have been part of. It's something that we celebrate and acknowledge that all of our gifts, all of the things that we can be grateful for, quite frankly, even some of the things we're not grateful for, but we have anyway, God's part of that. That God is part of the land and part of the people and part of the work and part of the effort and part of the desire. When we walk into our communities and see this abundance of food, we give thanks. When we realize we have this abundance and others don't, we also give thanks. But we give thanks with a sense of, okay, what do we do with this now? Because it's not all up to God, it's up to us as well. On Thanksgiving Sunday, Be the one who turns back and says thank you. Thank you to the people who clean the sanctuary quietly when no one's around. Say thank you to the people who take care of your children. Say thank you to the elders who have been there forever and ever and ever and have kept the community open. Say thank you to the person who is delivering the message. They put a lot of work into it. Say thank you to the person who held the door. Say thank you to the person who provided the cushions. There are so many ways in just a short experience that we can say thank you for things. And it truly does matter. Even Jesus, with all of his calling to make life better for everyone else, with his being God incarnate, with his being, we would think above any kind of pettiness when it comes to human gratitude and human graces. Even Jesus said, "Well, where are the others? Why aren't they thanking me too? Don't they realize what has just happened here?" We might not always, but maybe if we do it, someone else will notice and say thanks too. This can be a very, very cruel world sometimes. It can be very hard to navigate. A lot of people feel isolation. A lot of people feel that they don't matter. Thanksgiving Sunday is a day that we not only thank God for all the gifts we are given, but maybe it's a time when we thank each other too. It makes community a little bit warmer, a little bit grander, a little bit bigger. It makes people feel like they're seen, like they matter, like they'd be missed if they weren't there. Jesus didn't necessarily need to have that thanks, but he wanted it, just like we all do. So remember that as you're going about Thanksgiving Sunday. Give thanks for more than just food. Give thanks for other things, because we're all healed through the act of grace, and we all owe thanks to all the gifts we have been given.